You are listening to the Adapt Performance podcast, where we aim to make elite level strength and conditioning accessible to everybody. I'm your host, Jordan Webster, and let's get into the episode. Yes, guys, how we doing? Welcome back to another episode of the Adapt Performance podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Webster, and today, the thing I want to talk about is something that I feel like has always been a part of my life as a trainer, as an athlete, I guess, but as a coach. And I think it's taken me way too long to really put my finger on it and how important it is for me and how important it is for the athletes that I'm around. So I want to basically talk you through this and give you some practical takeaways, to be honest with you. You know, a little bit of a kick up the arse in many ways to sort your shit out maybe, or it just reaffirms that what you're doing is the correct thing. So yeah, before we get into that, like what's been happening then, just give you a little bit of a debrief. So training for me is going really, really well at the minute. I'm in a good phase of jiu-jitsu. I'm getting on the mats 3 to 4 times a week, which has been really good, actually. It's gradually just built up over the last year that I've been doing it. You know, so like when I first began, it was like 2 sessions a week and my body would feel pretty wrecked and I'd be struggling to kind of make it through. And then over time, you know, imagine that the body gets stronger and more resilient the more that you do something consistently. I'm able to stack on a little bit more training volume. So yeah, I'm doing 3 or 4 a week. Three's nice. I prefer 4 from a skill perspective, but 4's where I start to notice that I'm a little bit sorer than I would like. And the gym, I noticed I have to make a few more alterations. I'm having to reduce things down a little bit, either in terms of volume or intensity. So yeah, I'm on 3 to 4 a week, and then I'm in a big conditioning block at the minute from an S&C standpoint. So how that is looking for me at the moment is a bunch of zone 2 work. So I'm trying to gradually bump that up. So I'm doing 2 to 3 sessions a week of zone 2. Sometimes I tag it on the end of a strength session. Sometimes I do it as a standalone. And yeah, I'm aiming to gradually build it up to about 3.5, 4 hours over the coming months. And the idea with that is, look, I'm just adding 10 minutes a week of total volume, you know, so sometimes that might be, I put 5 minutes on each session. It might be that I do an extra, 10 to 15 minutes on the end of one session and keep the other one shorter, but I'm just playing around with that and just making it fit my life really. Because the barrier to zone 2 work is it takes time, right? And sometimes time is not what we have. And that's one of the biggest downsides of it, to be honest with you. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of zone 2 work, and then I'm gradually over the next week going to be transitioning to some more aerobic power-based work. Okay, so we're talking, it's the middle ground. It's not super high intensity, but it's not low intensity either. So we'll be talking like 8-minute rounds with 2 minutes rest, 6-minute rounds with 2 minutes rest. You know, doing 4 or 5 bouts of those. And what you're going to start to see is a little bit of a gradual transition. It's very much like linear periodization in a lot of ways. Linear periodization being the gradual swap over of volume and intensity. So starting off with low intensity, high volume, so doing loads of low stuff, and then you gradually make the shift on the other end of the continuum to doing a little bit of some super high intensity stuff. So I'm kind of stepping into that middle ground for a little while. And I really like linear periodization. You know, it's just a really easy, effective way of gradually taking things up a notch over time. So yeah, that's my conditioning really. And then the jiu-jitsu thing, you know, is probably underplayed, but as a club, some of the coaches have made a little bit of a change in the way that we are actually training, which has been interesting. So the typical way of jiu-jitsu in the past has been, you know, you drill something for like 45 minutes. So the instructor teaches a technique, you go through the drills, pretty low intensity really. You then do a bit of positional, and then you go into like your open round, your sparring, your live rolling. And so essentially of an hour and a half session, you probably get about 45 minutes worth of work. Whereas what we've transitioned over to now is a little bit more of an ecological approach, which is like a popular word in the MMA, in the jiu-jitsu realm. But essentially, it's a lot more task-based games, you know. So we're hunting for positions, we're hunting to win the game based on, you know, the rules that the coach sets. So it might be you're trying to get an underhook, and they're trying to, you know, counter that with this. And what it actually means is, like, in a 1 hour or an hour and a half session, it's all go. Like, there's not really too many low intensity minutes to be honest with you. You get like rest time in between each round, but that's been really interesting. I think that's going to have a really positive effect on my conditioning long term, to be honest with you, because I think I'm just getting more effective. And I'm curious to see what happens from a skill perspective as well. Teaching the concept. So yeah, that was a longer intro than I wanted it to be, but there we are. People just love talking about themselves. So anyway, the thing that I think people do not put enough worth on, and I think is an absolute I think it's a secret weapon. Genuinely, I think it's something that if you can crack it and you can really kind of stay consistent with it, is a game changer. So it's routine, right? It's routine. It's the ability to just settle into a really positive, low barrier version of making your way through life, right? Obviously, I'm going to turn this into a little bit more about performance and health and improving, sport. Ultimately, that's why I'm here. But if you're like me, like you thrive off of routine in a lot of ways, it's such a good thing because it allows you to get rid of the chaos of life in a lot of ways, right? You know that you're here and then you're there. And before you know it, it's automatic. There's not the devil on your shoulder trying to talk you out of going to the gym because you know you're going to the gym straight after work because that's what you always do. You've got your shoes with you. You've had your pre-workout snack. You've had your coffee. You've got your white Monster in the fridge to grab on the way out. It becomes automatic, right? It becomes, some people will say it's a little bit too robotic, but I don't think it is robotic. I don't think it is that. I just think it's an automatic thing. You're getting closer and closer to, this is who I am. This is what I do. I go to the gym. I'm a healthy person. I go to training straight after. I am an athlete. This is what I'm about. And yeah, I love it. Genuinely, I'm probably, I know as soon as I'm out of routine, and there's probably an element of psychological, maybe even a defect there. But I do think it makes or breaks my day if something goes up. So yeah, look, right. And I think here's a few sayings that you can kind of chew on a little bit. I don't care how hard you can go for a week. I care about how hard you can go for a year. Okay. The idea is I don't care about your short-term blasts of motivation where you're suddenly like, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And everything takes an effort and everything's like done with like, you're trying to run through a wall with that attitude. You find that people burn out with that, like consistency is just the key. And it's such a lame topic for a lot of people because like, yeah, it's the same thing that every other S&C coach or PT says. And I know, right? But it just is. It matters. It matters for how well you get stuff done. It matters for the adaptation. It matters for the consistency of the stimulus. It matters for you getting the right food in over time, taking care of yourself. It just is. So I don't care about what you can do for the next week. Show me what you can do over the next year. I want a nice steady average of you doing most of the good stuff all the time rather than doing all of the good stuff for a week only. And this is where you need to gradually build it in. This is where there's an element of psychology and working with a person and ultimately having some accountability and some support when you do inevitably fall off and your routine does go up in the air a little bit. You need people to kind of reinforce, you know what, it is what it is. You missed today's gym session, doesn't matter. We're going to make these changes and you're back on it tomorrow. So look, that's what it's about. It's about us figuring out ways that we can keep you doing the good stuff for a longer period of time, right? And look, I have so many examples here of champions that have done this really well. Off the top of my head, one of the teams that I used to work with, Cannondale Factory Racing, so it was a cross-country mountain bike side, which super high performing. They've had some amazing years, and within that we had an Olympian, Alan, who crushed it. I think he got silver. So an absolute beast, right? So as we were working together, I got more and more of an insight into what made them tick. What was the stuff that really kind of meant that they were so much better than other people. I see this across different sports. Like this was just a mountain bike example, but there are fight examples I can give you. There are rugby examples I can give you just from my time with them. So what used to happen with this is Phil, who was the team manager, the performance manager. At the end of every day, he would have a little bit of a debrief with each athlete. He didn't have many athletes; he had 5, I believe. And then he had probably 5 or 6 members of staff. At the end of each day, he'd have a quick catch up with everyone, a little bit of a Okay, how was today? What's tomorrow looking like? A little bit of a loose conversation just to get an idea. And usually what that is that gives the person an opportunity to voice opinions, really kind of showcase what went well, what didn't go well, etc. Phil's downloading all that information from the group. Obviously, he's been around, so he's probably going to have a good idea of like, okay, Jord was struggling today, or Alan felt this, whatever. And then afterwards, what he's basically going to do for the next day, this is when he was on a training camp and this was when they were at competitions, he would literally write out a schedule, okay? And I'm talking from 7:05, alarms go off. 7:15, breakfast as a team. 7:45, shower, get your bags ready, on the bike, okay? And I'm talking, it was like 15-minute intervals, sometimes even smaller. But what he would do with that is give people specific, like he'd name people, he would be like, Jord, you need to be at the start line at this time with the kit bag, with this, with that. Okay. I know, brilliant, right? I know exactly my role today. I go and I do this thing. It worked, and I didn't see the first inception of him ever doing that as a coach. I bet it started years and years ago, and I bet the first time he did it, he cocked up a bit. I bet it wasn't super smooth, and even when it's not super smooth nowadays, you can just roll with the punches. Phil, I can't be there because I'm already there. Okay, no worries. What we'll do is we'll prioritize that one. We'll get somebody else to fill your spot. It's just a real spot. It's just a really good way of making sure everything's logical. And look, not everyone works like that. But what I found is the athletes that he had on his team really bought into that. They found a lot of comfort, a lot of safety in knowing where they needed to be and what they needed to do. And, it was the key priority things. He wasn't like saying you're allowed to go for a piss at this time. It just was the most important things. There was a lot of freedom time built into that as well. Because he literally would say, boys, you got 3 hours. Okay, 3 hours, piss off, do what you need to do. And it's like, cool. But then when they came back together, they know, okay, right, I've got a job to do here. I've got this. I need to be on the bike. I need to do the S&C. I need to do this. It worked. And people always get the back up a little bit when you have like super strict routines. And I get it. It doesn't need to be strict, because what we don't want is for your routine or your schedule to trap you, right? We don't want you to feel like you are locked in. What we actually want is for this element of structure and routine to actually set you free a little bit, because if it's done well, it's going to give you the opportunity to ebb and flow, go in different directions, make some judgment calls, and really kind of develop yourself as an athlete. So look, a routine is not about, locking you down. It's about giving you the element of freedom so you can make some good decisions and actually use the mental energy you've got on the stuff that you actually need to use it on. So this is where, one of the main reasons I think it's actually so important is decision fatigue. Okay. Decision fatigue and anxiety. Let's kind of put them together, right? Yes, guys, what is going on? Quick break in today's episode for me to remind you about ADAPT's online strength and conditioning coaching. Our mission really is to make elite level strength and conditioning accessible to everybody. And our service does exactly that. So you get access to everything: an elite level coach, physiotherapist, psychologist, nutritionist, a community to keep you engaged. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is give you everything you would ever need in order for you to achieve your goals. So if that is something that you are curious about, get in contact and we'll just have a no pressure chat where I explain everything, find out a little bit more about you, and we can decide whether you are a good fit for our program. Okay, without further ado, let's get back into the episode. Cheers. So decision fatigue, I've spoke about it a lot, and I think about it a lot because when I'm trying to put programs together for people, when I'm trying to really get them to the next place, whether that's nutrition, recovery, integrating with sport, integrating rehab into life, whatever that thing is, I'm trying to get rid of as many of those mini moments where something might slip them up. They might try and talk themselves out of a situation. They might try and get caught up in a different task, okay? Decision fatigue is tiring. It's the idea that you've got so many things that you could do, you don't do anything, or you make a bad decision, right? And I think that with S&C, and this is, again, I rant about S&C a lot, it's what I think about all the time, right? I get annoyed because of the amount of stuff that comes out that is 1% stuff or even less, right? And it gets popularized so much and it gets overhyped so much that you actually end up in a situation where these 1% things are bigged up as if they are a 20%er. And then you get people that are like, oh, I'm going to do that 20%er. It's actually a 1%er. And now they've actually dropped the ball of good nutrition, good health parameters, all the things that are actually like a game changer to an athlete's performance because they did the small thing. So that's my annoyance with S&C, just a mini rant there. Like, what we're trying to do when we put a routine together is get you in a situation where it's automatic. Okay. You're just rolling with it. The momentum is flowing. Okay. You're not having to think too much about this. You go and do the thing. And this does like link into anxiety, right? Because I heard a saying of depression is thinking about what happened in the past, and anxiety is thinking about what is going to happen in the future. I'm like, wow, fair one. Like if you think about the days you've been sad, you're probably sad at something that happened in the past. You're stressing about something that's coming up. That's anxiety. You're thinking about something in the future. Most of the time, you can't control that shit anyway. Like realistically, you can control a few select variables that you can actually do. But the world is dynamic, and chances are you're not going to be able to control everything. So I think having a routine just reduces the chance of anxiety. Like I'm a little bit of a habitual planner, actually. The night before, I pretty much know what I'm gonna eat. Yeah, the next day, give or take, right? I know loosely. I always have lunch as a meal deal, right? I know I'm going to go to Co-op and I'm either going to get like a typical protein shake, I'll get 2 boiled eggs, and then I'll get either a sarnie, a poke bowl, or something like that, right? I don't know if I said that right. If I got that wrong, correct me, because I can't be in a public situation and saying a word wrong like that because I'll get embarrassed. So if I said it wrong, let me know. So I know what I'm going to eat, right? I know what I'm going to train. Okay, I can tell you down to the exercise what I'm going to train. I can tell you what I'm doing for work. I like my calendar, right? And this is probably where I'm going to sound super pedantic and probably a little bit OCD with it. It's not that, but what I really like is just having key things in my day that I know that's where I need to be, that's what I need to do, and everything else kind of filters around that. Sometimes it's actually more training. If I just put my training in my calendar, I know, boom, everything else can move around that. So yeah, I think it helps with decision fatigue, the anxiety side of things, and the routine. I'm going to get to the practical steps of this soon, right? But let's talk about the actual S&C side, right? The actual performance element of being in a routine and why this really matters. The reason why routine matters, because it gives you the ability to apply regular and consistent stimulus and have recovery off the back of it. Okay. Being in a good routine means that you're really consistent with those things. Going to the gym, doing that exercise, doing that weight, etc. Once you finish the gym, you're going to have a shake, you're going to have some food, you're going to go home, you're going to have a nap, you're going to do all those things. Routine allows you to just settle into a little bit of an automatic mode of doing the right things over time. Okay. That's why it's so good. It's the regularity of the thing. Going back to the quote at the beginning, I don't care about how hard you can go for a week. I care about how hard you can go for a year or series of years. Okay. That's why routine's good. It's not you going to the gym and doing a bit of this, doing a bit of that, and not eating for 15 hours afterwards, right? It's about settling to the stuff that you know is really good for you and then setting it up so that you can do that stuff more and more every single time. And look, there is going to be some resiliency that you need to build around it for sure. Like when stuff goes wrong, that's then something you need to work through, because some people, when a session doesn't go to plan, or they turn up to a gym and they're closing early because of, I don't know, bank holiday or whatever, they fall to pieces. Okay, you're going to have to work on that. We're going to need to work on the resiliency for you to not be super reliant on, like pre-performance routines, even though they're super valuable. That cannot be your crutch. That cannot be the reason that you fail, because it's a really easy way to fail. We don't want that, right? The other thing, okay, going into this routine, it's load management. We speak about load management all the time in S&C. And what this actually is being able to get a really good idea of how much work you're actually doing. Yeah. How much work you're actually doing. That applies to your sport. That applies to the S&C work. That applies to everything else as well. We just need a rough idea of the numbers so that we can spot when there are huge spikes, when there are drop-offs, right? Because load management's a huge cause of injury, or load mismanagement, to probably be more accurate, is if you have huge spikes where you've been training, you've been dilly-dallying, you've been doing a bit of this, doing a bit of that, and then all of a sudden you rock up with an absolute insane week of training. That's then an issue. That is probably when you're going to see some injuries or something flare up off the back of it, okay? We know this. This is like a thing. So if we get into a routine, guess what? That just doesn't happen as much. Or at least if those things do pop up, it's not totally like a random flash in the pan, super high intensity thing. We've built up some tolerance because we've been regular, all right? So practically then, what do I actually think helps when we think about developing a routine that's going to work for you? The first thing to say is your whole life in some way, shape or form has elements of routine already built into it. Human beings, like I do think we flourish off of it. And whether that's genetic or whether it's just the way that the world works, right? The sun goes up, the sun comes down. We've got 24 hours and then day resets. Over a 7-day cycle, you get 5 days of working, then you have 2 days of probably laying in bed a little bit more and you see the kids more, whatever. Okay. There is routine and there are like societal rules and probably like environmental rules to how we operate, right? What I want you to do is, first and foremost, is actually just map out your week. We do this with all of our guys as soon as they sign on to Adapt, okay? We do a big performance questionnaire. We get like all the information we get is we want their current timetable, okay, work schedule, their training schedule, where they have free time, when they have to pick the kids up. We literally get them to write it all out, okay? And they give us this in good detail. They also rank it in a scale of like high intensity, low intensity, or medium intensity across that week, particularly the physical stuff. That then gives us a really clear idea of where their windows of opportunity are to actually put sessions in, where we need to pull back a little bit. If I see your week and it's just red, that's a warning sign for me and Joe as the coaches to be like, okay, we actually probably need to start specializing or thinking more about where our specialty can apply to behavior change around lifestyle as opposed to training, you know? But yeah, so that's what we do. So in the performance questionnaire, we have a timetable. We get, the gym information, performance questionnaire. We'll cover like your health, your injuries. So we can send that over to our physio, Ollie. We'll get into nutrition stuff as well, like recovery and, your main barriers and motivations for training. Like all that stuff really matters. But anyway, going around the houses a little bit there, we map out the week. Okay, we map out the week and then we go back and forth and we're like, okay, well, this is where we think, based on your schedule, a few sessions would fit really well. Okay, as soon as you finish work, 30 minutes to get to the gym, boom, knock it out of the park, get it done, go home, recover, spend some time with the wife, the husband, whatever, and you're good, right? So map out the week. And one of my best friends, I wish I would have known this before because I would have told him he's not my best friend anymore because it weirds me out. He doesn't use a calendar, right? And I don't know if this is normal. Like if I did not have a calendar where I put in doctor's appointment on Saturday, I've got to have my braces tightened, which I'm fuming about, by the way. It's mine and the missus' anniversary on the weekend as well, so we're going to get we're off for a massage, and then we're going to go to Slap and Pickle, which is this unreal burger place. If I did not have that stuff in the calendar, it's not happening. I swear to God, I'm just not turning up. I don't have memory. I've got zero memory. So yeah, anyway, map out the week, okay? If that's a calendar, great. If you do it in your notes, great. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you have it on the front of your fridge where you've been like, these are my key things that I'm going to do. But you can't just be operating through life with no idea where you are, what you want to do. There are some people that probably make it work, okay? I just think that is probably the minority of people. And until you've actually tried this way, I don't want you telling me that the other way is better. So yeah, you're going to write in the big rocks, okay? So work, then gym. This is when you're going to do your aerobic stuff. This is when you're on the way. Like factor in travel time. For some of you people that are habitually late to shit, right? One, it annoys people. It pisses people off. But you need to know how long it takes you to get to a destination. So you actually need to factor in your travel time of getting to the gym so you don't miss your warm-up, which means you're not at an increased risk of injury, all those things, okay? So like that's a skill. Being on time is a skill, right? And it's a skill you haven't developed if you're always late. So it's just being able to say no to a meeting that's directly before because you know that it always runs over. It's a skill to be able to look at Google Maps and anticipate that, okay, that road's always busy because I go there every single time. So I need to leave 10 minutes before so I'm not late. You need to write in these big blocks, okay? And the more you can think about those things, the less you're going to be tripped up by it, okay? And the other thing you might have heard of is, what's the book? Atomic Habits. Okay, I forgot his name. I forgot his name. Somebody tell me his name. We'll call him Boris. It's not Boris, but the guy who wrote Atomic Habits is probably the book that every personal trainer will recommend. Yeah, and there's a reason for that. It's good, and it's probably one of the first ones out there at the time. And what it basically speaks about, Atomic Habits, is building habits. It's habit formation and how you basically get to a point where you are reinforcing more of the things and the habits and the actions that make you the person that you want to be. Okay. It's you just do the thing consistently over time and you become that person. Okay. It speaks about habit stacking. Okay. It's the idea that you take something that you already do intuitively. Okay. That is already a habit. So brushing your teeth in the morning before you get in the shower. Okay, well, what do we need to tag on the end of that? Well, I need to get a lot better at taking my my morning supplements, my vitamin D, my zinc, my hay fever tablet. I'm actually getting a hay fever injection tomorrow, which I'm excited about because I cannot breathe. Where was I going with that one? Yeah, so off the back of brushing teeth. There we go. Bloody hell. Brushing your teeth. You take all your supplements directly after it, and you literally put it front and center. So next to where your toothbrush and your toothpaste and all that stuff is, have a little pill box, have the supplements next to it. So, boom, you're not forgetting, right? You'll see it. So then it's a decision for you to just be like, boom, grab, done. Okay. The easier you can make it, the better. If you can have a little pill box that has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that was super useful for me. I don't do it anymore because my supplements happen during breakfast now. Again, it's just in the way of the porridge, so I make sure I get it. And so that's like, you want to encourage more of the things that you want to do. But the counterpoint for this, if you've got habits that you need to break, right? Let's use the example of snacking. Let's take the example of you're a midnight snacker. You get to the witching hour. You get to about 9 p.m. You've had your dinner at about 8, half 8. And you're sitting on the sofa and you're like, oh, I'm a bit snacky. I could do with a little bit of something sweet just to wash it down. And you know that you're going to go straight to that bloody fridge, freezer, cupboard, whatever it is. And you're going to tuck into some Tony's sea salt and caramel chocolate, right? Well, guess what? If you don't buy it, you can't. The only way you're going to have that is if you go to a shop and bring it back, okay? That is a huge barrier, which is positive for you if you are somebody that overeats and you don't want that habit to sit anymore. The other side of it is maybe you just put it on the top shelf, okay? Because it's not then in sight. It's not in front of you all the time. Therefore, you're probably going to have less chance of just grabbing a quick little snacky snack, right? So that's something, okay? If you're a smoker, if you drink alcohol, all those things, like one of the ways, so I used to do some circuit work. When would this have been? Maybe like 8, I'm going to say 8 years. Nah, yeah, let's go with 8 years. I'll just give it time. I used to do some like personal training, some circuit work for a charity in Sheffield, Mind Body Connect. And basically, the idea was that we would train them, and then obviously you get some positive endorphins. You're basically giving them an opportunity to do something really good for themselves, to kickstart that process of like stepping away from addiction, and that was like a catalyst for change. And then through the charity, they would I think it was like if they attended 10 sessions in a row without missing one, they would then get a free gym membership, which is sick. And then I think there's like a time frame of how long they went to the gym and they checked in, and then they could get put through their level 2 PT, level 2 gym instructor and personal training call, to really kind of get the life on track, which is sick. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done, to be honest with you. But one of the things that one of the guys said is his issue was more around alcohol, which then led to a little bit of cocaine. It wasn't a little bit of cocaine use. I think he loved it. But yeah, it was the booze. That was the initial. It was going to the pub with the boys, and the environmental and the social element. That was how it went. It started off as, oh, I'm just going to go for a pint, or even just turn up just to see the boys. Even if he was going to have a sober one, it soon kind of derailed. So what he started doing, he was like, I realized that friendship group just probably wasn't super supportive of where I needed my life to be at this point. So what I used to do is literally book myself in to classes in the evening, okay? And I'd make sure I picked the most like unsociable time, like 8:30 p.m., which meant that, I wouldn't go to the pub before because I wanted to go and get my spin class in. I wanted to go and get I can't remember what martial art he was into, but he'd go and do his martial arts or whatever. Gets to the weekend, and what he'd do is he'd go visit family in a different city so that he was consistently not around the bad friendship group. Not bad, I just say in quotations, but it definitely wasn't supportive of who he wanted to be. So that is an example of like barrier removal from an S&C standpoint. I think like some of the problems that our fighters actually, if I think about some of our fighters, like chronic overworkers, like they want to do more. They love skill training. They want to go and smash a bag. They want to go spar. They want to do all these things. Well, what we've basically suggested to some of them, when we're really trying to enforce rest days and we're trying to enforce that stuff, is they actually just need to make plans. They actually just need to think about stuff other than training sometimes and arrange to go out with the missus, get dragged to IKEA, all that stuff. And it's just finding ways of you identifying the stuff that's not great for you and putting something in place so you don't do it more, right? So I've kind of gone around the houses that last little one. But ultimately, when we're thinking about routines, we're thinking about building positive routines and kind of breaking out of the habit of negative routines. There's some of the things that I would be thinking about, okay? Map out the week as a basic. Just know what you're doing from a gym perspective each day. That's like level 1, tier 1 stuff. Don't be rocking up to, don't be rocking up to a gym not knowing what you're going to do. Don't go into a new week without knowing what days you're going to go train, okay? Don't go into a month without knowing roughly what you're actually working towards, what are your main goals at the moment. So look, you can zoom out as much as possible, or you can go super deep with it. I do think there's huge value in going super deep with this, because I think the more you can identify some of the fires that are going to pop up along the way, the better. So look, that was probably a little bit of a different podcast episode in a lot of ways, because, there was S&C in there, it wasn't sets and reps and stuff. But this is coaching. These are some of the tools that, we use on a day-to-day basis to make sure our athletes not only succeed this week, but they succeed for the next few months and years and decades. And they're really they're settling into who they want to be. So sweet. Right. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor, share it with somebody who you think might get some benefit from it. If you're a social media user, I use a lot of social media, obviously, like Instagram's probably our main one. If you could share this on Instagram, and maybe with a key takeaway, or you corrected me on how to say Pokeball or Pokeball, one of them. That'd be, hugely appreciated. It's really good for our business and just generally, getting the exposure out there. So sweet. If you have any questions about today, give me a shout. I hope you have a great rest of the day, rest of the week, whatever you're up to. I hope you're absolutely fucking smashing it. And I will speak to you all soon. Okay, that is the end of today's episode, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, please do let us know and then share it with somebody who may find this episode interesting. Okay, see you next time. Cheers.